Okay, this is a video about using Exocad and how to use the material configuration tool. First thing you're going to want to do is go to a Windows Explorer window, the File Explorer, and you're going to want to navigate to your Exocad folder, which is under the C drive. And once you're within your root Exocad folder, right, not Exoplan and not any old installs, it has to be the current install. You're going to look for DentalDB, right? All configuration data is stored in the DB, not in the CAD app itself. And once you're here, the folder you're going to look for is bin, binary, and then if you sort by name, it'll be under W, Work Param Config Tool. And that's the one we're going to want. But before we do that, let's go back into the DB folder and go into icons and material icons. And I sent you a small icon file called the strategy logo. If you want, you can make this your logo for milled gold. But in the future, any custom materials that you make, you can use this process to add a custom logo. So take the this logo I sent you, dump it into this folder, and then we'll carry on with the Work Params Config tool. So again, once we're in the DB folder, go to binary, and then we'll open this up here. Okay, so when this tool opens, the first thing that you'll see probably is this screen right here. Now you're going to want to look up here, and the default configuration is going to be stated here. So it's called Exocad Default, and there's the name of this program right here, and then your version of Exocad. So if you go up here to the little fly out options here, what some people call the hamburger, you can see that there's a couple options here. For now, don't enable expert mode, because by default your materials tab here is already available to you, and we're just going to stay within that. If you enable this, you get not only materials but all of these different more advanced things, and we don't want to mess with that today. So for now, just keep it on the default materials tab. So what we're going to want to do is we don't want to work in default, right? We want to leave that as it is. So we're going to copy the current material configuration, and then whatever you want to call it, you can call it my Exocad config, or for our purposes here, I'll just call it test. Oh, and I've done this before. It just gave me a warning. Material configuration with this name already exists. Provide another value. So you can do whatever, but you'll name yours and you'll hit OK, and it's either going to come up or it'll show here when you load a specific material configuration. So I'm going to be working under test because I don't want to change what I've done on my personal config file. But you'll be working in whichever one that you want, say my Exocad config. So once you copy the default and name it to whatever you want to work with, it will show up right here. All right. So what we want to do is we want to make a new material. All right, one that's got vetted parameters for your milling center. In this case, I provided you with Strategy Milling's Exocad parameters. So what we want to do here is we never want to create a new material from scratch, right? That's not a good way to do this. What you actually want to do is copy a material that's kind of close to what you want to end up with. So in our case, wax or NP metal could work. So we're going to select NP metal, but then we're going to copy it and change it, and then save it to what our new one is going to be. So now that NP metal is loaded, let's copy it, and we'll call it milled gold. And once that loads, we'll have a new material to start working on. So here's our new material, milled gold. Over here, it looks exactly like NP metal, but we'll change that. In fact, let's do that first. So if we click over to the Properties tab, you're going to see a few things that you can change. What we're going to be focusing on is the image. So we want to differentiate this from NP gold so it stands out as you're selecting your materials. And in the drop down here is where our logo will be, but we need to add a logo to this list. So let's click Add Remove Images. We're going to add, and then we're going to navigate to it. So remember where we put that before, right? It was in our root DentalCAD folder, our root Exocad folder, and then DentalDB, icons, material, and then here's a logo that we added. So there it is. It shows up in our list. So let's back out of this, and then in our drop down, we'll find it, select it, showing up there. Now when we go back to parameters, it'll ask us to save. Once it saves this, it'll show up over here with our fancy new icon that'll allow it to kind of stand out from the list for us. And there it is. So at this point, we're going to stay in the Parameters tab, and using the list I gave you from Strategy, you're going to change all of these values. Here's your default value column right here, and then there's a minimum and a maximum. So Strategy has kind of looked at these values and entered things that make a lot of sense for the milled gold process. But obviously, you know, as the end user, these are all available for you to tweak. Now, it's important to remember that this material configuration editor just essentially sets defaults for what DentalDB is going to build the case around. But within DB, you can change those, and on a client-by-client basis, you can DB if you set contacts for John Doe heavier, DB is going to remember that, and next time you do a case for John Doe, it'll remember that. In fact, DB overwrites these on a client basis. So any changes you make here is just global. DB will overwrite these values on a client-by-client basis as you make those changes. So that's all for milled gold. What you're going to want to do is X out of this. It'll save. And then I'll show you what that looks like in DB. And there you go. When you select a crown and whatever type of restorations you've chosen for this to show up, it will show up there. Once you select it, all of those settings are loaded. But again, just for your knowledge, in DB, depending on what client you've picked, these settings will be customized by DB. So if somebody wants heavy contacts on this material, it will be overwritten by DB. Thanks. Incidentally, something that might be confusing to you in case you don't know this, all those changes we made are saved in a work config file, and that is actually found right here in this drop-down list in DB. So it may sign into Dental Share, but once it does that, here's what you're going to see. Your local material configurations are default, and then whatever you've just created is going to be there. So you'll want to select that, click OK in order to see those changes that you made.